While the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are known for their outlandish and action-packed adventures, they're also known for their versatility in touching on any kind of topic. Among the stories from the guest era of Volume 1, one canon story stood out for being so iconic that many fans still consider it one of the franchise's cornerstones. Today, I will discuss the Sons of the Silent Age story, its consequences, and its later adaptation into the 2003 cartoon. The story takes place after the events of Return to New York, where the Turtles are forced to face the Shredder because of Raphael's impulsive actions that almost got him killed. It also takes place after the events of the River Trilogy, where Raphael almost evolved back into being a baby turtle. Having spent so much time at the farmhouse, Splinter convinced the Turtles, April and Casey, to take a raft trip downriver, traveling by night and camping at the shores of a remote lake. Waiting for the sunset, the group spent time hanging from a bridge. Seeing how silent Raphael was, Leonardo decided to reach out to him, but he refused to talk about his thoughts. It was later Casey's turn to try to reach Raph, but he told him that being a human, he wouldn't understand what he was going through. He was also not ready to talk about it and encouraged everyone to leave him alone with his thoughts. Among his thoughts were his irresponsible actions during their fight with the clan, and his fight to retain his identity during their encounters with Bloodsucker and the Old Man River. As darkness falls, the group takes a raft downriver. After noticing the lack of dialogue around her, April started writing about the situation in her journal. She observed that the Turtles had all been very silent and calm in the past few months, less jokey, less physical, and less interested in learning from their master. She attributed this change to their defeat of the Shredder and their not having found a path away from the warring ways. On their way to the lake, they passed by a nuclear plant. The sight of those cooling towers was enough to make April feel uncomfortable, and she could tell that Raphael was too, as he removed his feet from the water. Raphael sensed something else in the water, but he didn't say anything. And he was onto something there. First one, and then 4 merpeople were following the raft. When they reached the lake, they camped by the shore and spent the night listening to Casey telling some stories. The Turtles were still very silent, but Raphael was completely out of the conversation, facing the water. April noticed him reaching for the water until he found a merwoman bleeding to death. With the help of April, Raphael took the merwoman out of the water, and they noticed that she wasn't breathing and had no pulse. The Turtles stood astonished as April and Casey tried to resuscitate the creature, but then Raphael turned around and noticed 4 mermen coming out of the water, not understanding what was going on. Fearing they wouldn't understand what CPR was, the Turtles had to intervene to give April time to help her. This resulted in an underwater fight. April looked into the merwoman's eyes and realized she was the last female of her race, an ancient race that has seen the planet go through many changes and even befriended the Native Americans of the area. In this trance, April was able to see the merwoman's mother dying from the nuclear pollution in the river next to the power plant. By the time April snapped out of this vision, the merwoman was dead. They let the 4 mermen take her back to the water. This was when April realized they were the last 4 males of their species, the only 4 in existence, just like the Turtles. Suddenly, the Turtles' recent silent streak took a different meaning to her. However, the merpeople weren't wholly extinct. A merwoman named Rihanna appeared in the pages of TMNT Volume 2, living in a subterranean lake under the streets of New York, alongside a giant snapping turtle known as Terrorpin. It was later revealed that this merwoman had an egg, and later, a baby. But we never saw those 4 mermen again. The original story was published in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 28 in February 1990. It was written by Steve Murphy, with art by Jim Lawson and flashbacks by Kevin Eastman and Rick Veitch. The themes of extinction, nuclear pollution, and environmentalism are not strange to Murphy's stories. In fact, his work on the Puma Blues and many other of his Archie adventures are filled with these topics, although none more than Puma Blues. He also got the chance to write the adaptation for the 2003 series, this time with a different, more hopeful ending. While Rihanna was introduced in a story written by Jim Lawson, Steve Murphy was so intrigued with the character that he ended up having a dream about her. The entire dream was translated into the short story in which we discovered she had a baby. The only addition he made to that dream was the cave carvings at the beginning. As for the adaptation, Peter Laird tried to push for the episode to contain that crucial scene where April realizes the turtles are the only specimens of their species. While the scene is there, it's not something explicitly said. The adaptation had the same title and took place after the events of Season 3, when the turtles almost died trying to prevent Shredder from returning to his homeworld. This experience left Leonardo thinking he wasn't good enough to lead his brothers, as he couldn't defeat the Shredder without blowing themselves up. This means that for the adaptation, the troubled turtle was Leo and not Raphael. Half of the episode is almost the same story, beat by beat, but it's centered more around that power plant by the river, a plant in the process of being decommissioned. The lake where the turtles camped was Norwa Takagi, which was a Native American name that meant Lake of the Lost Tribe. Instead of bleeding wounds, the merwoman in the adaptation was dying from radiation burns. But looking into her eyes, April was able to see her past and a prophecy of their near future. She discovered that these were the last 5 of their species, the last of a proud race who were at some point slaves in the lost city of Elintius. They resisted being the slaves of the Elintians, of whom I have yet to make a video about, and in the resulting revolution, the city sank beneath the waves. With their newfound freedom, the Mer people found a new home in the North American fresh waters. These creatures lived long lives and witnessed the rise of the native tribes and the expansion of human settlements, pushing them increasingly into hiding. Unfortunately, this growth of the human population resulted in the pollution of their waters, which started making them sick. April saw the vision of the merwoman trying to save the eggs of their next generation in the river, right next to the power plant. After a short inspection, they realized that the power plant had a leak that so far was contained thanks to a small dam. Unfortunately, this dam was about to break. Donnie figured out a plan to blow up one of the cooling towers outwards, forming a new dam. After the successful explosion, the plant inspector realized about the leakage, and the whole event gave the babies the crucial opportunity to hatch and leave the area without getting poisoned by the radioactive waste. But you may ask yourself why the story was titled Sons of the Silent Age. Well, I don't think it was ever explicitly said, but the title seems to reference the dying legacy of a species, a race vanishing without being remembered, in the same way of civilizations whose stories were lost to time. The 4 mermen, like the turtles, are the only ones of their race left, and once they're gone, there will be no record of them. No one will tell their stories, and no one will remember them. Their legacy will be a complete silence. Both the original and the adaptation make references to the struggle of existence. In the opening scene of the comic, we see an eagle trying to catch a fish from the water, but the fish was actually a merperson who tried to grab the eagle instead. The eagle escaped to live another day, leaving the merperson empty-handed. To me, this was a foreshadowing of the struggle of these creatures to survive, of how every day could be the last in this constant struggle for survival. It also shows us the merperson alone and isolated, like their place in their environment. This sequence is later echoed in the final pages, where we see the eagle taking a fish to the top of the cooling tower, unaware of the danger around it. This worked impressively well as the ending of the story, because it wasn't just the mer people and the turtles that were going extinct. This ending implied that pollution would be the end of the rest of the species on the planet, and that one day we would all end up being forgotten. What are your thoughts on this story? Do you prefer the hopeful adaptation or the somber original? Leave your comments below. Thanks for watching. See you in the sewers.